All right, so today we're starting our new unit, our last unit, and it's called Matter and Energy in Ecosystems. So we're continuing on the life science, and we're continuing to talk about ecosystems, but about other topics. The last unit was about food webs. This time we're going to focus more on photosynthesis and consumers and producers and those types of things. So in this unit, you're going to be learning about how matter and energy affect the way ecosystems work. To start, we're going to watch a movie about Biosphere 2, which is a closed ecosystem that is an actual scientific research station built by humans. So remember, an ecosystem is something that contains all the living and non-living things that interact within an area. So in this biosphere, these things were all contained within a closed system. So we're going to watch this video here.
Biosphere 2 was built between 1987 and 1991, and the goal was to see if 8 people could live inside a closed system where they would grow their own food, rebreathe the same air over and over again, and reuse and recycle the same water over and over again. And their hope was that everything they learned by doing this closed system experimentation, would allow us to someday live elsewhere in the solar system.
I'm Linda Lay, and I was one of the original crew members in Biosphere 2. Biosphere 2 was designed to be completely separate, which means the atmosphere has to be sealed off from the outside atmosphere. Every little seam had to be tested to make sure it wasn't leaking. We grew almost all of our own food inside of the biosphere, and of course we had to cook. For our farm, we had plants and animals, lots of different kinds of plants. We started out with 3 different kinds of animals. Chickens, and we got eggs from the chickens. We had 1 egg a week per person. We had goats, so we got a little bit of goat milk from the goats and a little bit of goat meat.
Biosphere 2 contains 5 unique biomes or plant communities, including the tropical rainforest, the savanna, tropical ocean, mangrove marsh, and the coastal fog desert.
Well, all 8 of us had our own job, and my job was to make sure that the rainforest, the savanna, and the desert were functioning. What I mean, the plants were growing, the animals were happy, the temperatures were correct, to see if these were really good choices for a biosphere that someday might be off of the face of the planet.
The 8 people living inside faced many challenges. Among these were 14-hour workdays and producing barely enough farm crops to sustain themselves. They had very little food.
The agriculture was also challenging because we weren't really growing quite enough food to give us all the calories we needed to do all the work we needed to do. And sometimes you could really feel that you were at the end of your calories. You couldn't work anymore because you used up all of the food that you were eating. We built Biosphere 2 to be closed to the outside atmosphere for 100 years. So when we closed the door in 1991, we expected to have it closed and separate from the Earth's atmosphere for 100 years. The people would come out after 2 years, which we did, but we expected to have it closed, and that would be a very beautiful long-term experiment. In fact, it didn't go on that long. A lot of different difficulties cropped up, both inside the biosphere itself, but also with funding and with other things that happened on the outside.
One of the main outcomes of the closed mission era of the early 1990s was that people found just how hard it is to replicate Earth under glass. All of the things we take for granted that the Earth does, clean air, clean water, plants that grow naturally, was vastly harder for people to design and achieve in a closed system.
You can't really fail as long as you learn something from the experiment and as long as you learn something from the questions you have. If you just stop, maybe you could call that a failure because you didn't follow up on the system. But in Biosphere 2, we sure learned a lot.
What do you think of that? Anyone like to do that? Would you like to live in this closed system for 2 years? Right? It's kind of...
There would be enough people.
Yeah, I mean, you're lacking people. You really only have those 7, researchers there with you. I think as they said, they weren't able to grow enough food So that's an issue. You know, you're kind of hungry all the time. But it's very interesting because where we're currently going with our Earth and with our issues with global warming and, you know, the increased storms, like we may have to sometime down the line, I don't think in our lifetime, but find an alternate way to live. So is this an alternate way to live, right? Is this, you know, have little closed systems where you create your own mini Earth to be able to support yourself? So our unit is based off of this real experiment that happened. If this is something that interests you, there is a movie, Biodome 2. There's also a comedy called Biodome, which is pretty funny. It's an older movie, but neither one I can show in class, so I won't be showing those. But during this unit, you're going to work for the Biodome investigation team under head ecologist Dr. Brian Corey as he tries to discover possible reasons why the Biodome experiment failed. Remember, she said it failed because of outside reasons. There wasn't enough funding, political issues, but it also failed on the inside. There were things that didn't go so well on the inside. So we're studying a fictional scenario, but it is based off of Biosphere 2, which was real. So here is our mission from Dr. Brian Corey. He says, welcome to your mission. Welcome to the Biodome investigation team. You just learned about Biosphere 2, which is an experimental research facility that was built for learning more about the Earth and its ecosystems. 5 years ago, the econauts constructed a biodome similar to Biosphere 2. They recently noticed that the organisms inside the biodome were getting sick and failing to reproduce. To protect the people and organisms inside, they shut down the biodome. The econauts hired us to figure out what caused their biodome to fail, but we need your help. I'm including a presentation that explains your mission in more detail. Student ecologist, we are counting on you. Brian, Dr. Brian Corey. So introducing the biodome. 5 years ago, a local group called the Econauts began an ambitious project to determine if humans could survive on another planet. They constructed a biodome, an ecosystem inside a larger glass dome, larger than a football field. So it's pretty big. The ecosystem was filled with plants, animals, and a volunteer group of 8 humans. For the problem. For the first few years, the plants and animals inside the biodome seemed healthy and normal. In the last few years, however, the econauts began to notice some problems. Animals were getting sick and failing to reproduce. Plants weren't growing as big or producing as much fruit as they once did. The econauts realized that something had gone wrong. Although the organisms were safely removed from the biodome, the cause of these problems is still a mystery. So the econauts want to build another biodome, but first they need to understand what went wrong with this one. Your mission is to help them solve this mystery. Our unit question then, that the whole idea of it is how do all the organisms in an ecosystem get the resources they need to release energy? Because ultimately that was our issue, right? The energy piece. In order to release energy, remember, organisms need energy storage molecules. We've been learning about those for the past unit as well. And in order to get that energy from that storage, we have to be able to release it. Remember, oxygen was the other thing you needed to release that. We're going to be learning more about that process throughout the unit. To answer our question about how organisms get what they need to release energy, we'll investigate why the biodome organisms didn't have enough energy storage molecules. So this is chapter 1 question that we're going to be working to answer. Why didn't the plants and animals in the biodome have enough energy storage molecules? So you should be thinking to yourself, what are some reasons that organisms might need energy storage molecules? This we should be able to answer, right? What are some things that organisms need energy storage molecules for? What's the first one? To reproduce, right? Reproduction requires energy. So we need the energy storage molecules to reproduce. Is that it? Is that all we use energy for? What else do we use energy for? Brody?
Digest the food,
Digestion, absolutely. What else do you use energy for?
move around.
To move around, to breathe, to walk, to sit, to sleep. They actually use energy to sleep. Okay, your heart's still beating, still requires energy. So everything that organisms do require energy, right? So we need energy storage molecules for everything that we do. We already know that an energy storage molecule is a molecule that organisms can use to release the energy that they need to survive. So the energy storage molecule is storing it. It's holding it. It's not the energy itself. Okay? The energy is stuck in there. It's like if you put all your belongings into a storage unit and you lose the key, then what? You're out of luck, right? They're all stuck in the storage unit. So there's a way to unlock that unit, and for us, our energy storage molecules are unlocked with oxygen. We're going to learn about that throughout the unit as well. So next you're going to read from an article set called the Biodome Files. You're going to use the files to make some initial claims about the Chapter 1 question. As you read, you want to look for information that might help you figure out why there weren't enough energy storage molecules for the plants and animals in the biodome. So as you read, you're trying to see if you can find a reason why there weren't enough energy storage molecules. So you can, if you have the slide set open, you can click this link. If you do not, then you can just open the number 2 for today. And there are 5 files in the article set. You only have to read one, at least one. If you find it interesting and you want to read more than one, that is fine. As you read your one, you want to annotate parts of the article that help you answer the Chapter 1 question. After you finish reading, answer the Chapter 1 question in Amplify. So there'll be a question, and you want to answer that, and then we're going to hand in on page 3 when we finish. So let's go to Amplify. So when you get into Amplify, this is what you will see, examining the biodome files. It's the directions I just talked about. You're going to choose one of these, at least one. You're going to read and annotate. When you finish, you're going to answer this question here, Chapter 1 question. When you get done, you have to hand it in. But to hand it in, you have to click the number 3 and then hand it. Okay, there's no hand in on the first page. You have to hand it in on the 3rd page. So go ahead and choose your file. Read, annotate, answer the question, hand in. When you are done, then I want you in Google Classroom to choose one of the study materials. There's either BlueKit, GimKit, or Quizlet, and get a beginning look at the vocab for the unit. I will come around and make sure everyone's good to go. Go ahead and start.